I'm Tiffany and I'm 28. My oldest sister, Michelle, moved out 2 years ago after getting married, but I still reside with my parents. My grandpa gave me a computer for my birthday in middle school, which sparked my interest in app creation. I currently operate a home-based web company. My current career began as a result of the enthusiasm that gift ignited. But my grandfather, who I loved very much, died 3 years ago. He was my lone confidant and had lived with us. I have been more withdrawn after his passing. During the day, I work quietly by myself while my folks are at work. My job is not understood by them, who merely view me as a shut-in playing games. Michelle has also consistently denigrated me. Being abandoned by my family was a major factor in my decision to study computers. Michelle was always given preference by my parents, who gave me little thought. My grandparents were the only people who loved me and spent most of their time with me when I was growing up. My present job began when my grandparents gave me a computer for my 14th birthday. In contrast to my sister, my parents have never given me a birthday present. My room is the only spot I have left in this house now that both of my grandparents have passed away. Even yet, I try to help out around the house as much as I can because my parents reared me and gave birth to me, so I don't really despise them. Tiffany, is breakfast ready? My mother says abruptly as she opens my door on a Sunday morning. It is past 9 in the morning. I respond, yeah, it's on the table, ready to eat. I've taken up the housework since my grandfather passed away. My parents believe that since I'm always playing games, it's only normal. I do all of the cooking, cleaning, washing, and grocery shopping. Oh, have you seen your father? He departed after eating breakfast early. Looks like Dad went out again. I ponder. He has been leaving the house early on the weekends lately. He and Mom get along very fine, although he usually finds it difficult to refuse her. In order to avoid the hectic itinerary Mom usually arranges for him on his days off, he most likely leaves early. Nevertheless, this is only conjecture, as I don't recall speaking to Dad since middle school. Mom says Michelle and her family will visit around noon today. Michelle is on her way. Startled, I inquire. Remember that she is your sister, so don't be so shocked. You haven't seen each other in a long time, have you? It has undoubtedly been a long time. It seems to me that this is the first time she has returned home since getting married. Despite being married 2 years ago and going out to dinner with her parents, my sister hasn't come to our house yet. Our parents went to visit her while she was pregnant since she didn't return home. Is there a significant event occurring? She must have had a strong purpose for coming. Yes, she did say she had things to discuss. Make sure to prepare a delicious meal for her as she will be returning home after a long absence. I answer, right, I got it, but I'm a little nervous because of Michelle's previous lack of warmth toward me, even if I'm excited to meet my nephew. I ask Mom, can I get this month's food money? I realize I haven't received my grocery money yet. I'm going shopping right now. Didn't your father give it to you? I should obtain it from you, he said. I am not carrying any cash. I barely received $50 last month. This month I require the entire amount. No, she responds, tossing the cash down the table. Here's $30. This wouldn't occur if you worked correctly. How long are you going to play? I am working, as I have stated. I don't want to hear justifications. You are only using your pocket money to play games. When you are unable to support yourself, don't discuss employment. That isn't accurate. Enough. She storms off, saying, I've given you some money. Get the rest from your father. I breathe a long sigh and go back to work. I leave to go shopping once I find a decent place to stop, but I still feel nervous. I had heard that Michelle would be arriving around that time, so I hurry to finish my shopping by early afternoon. As soon as I get home, I get to work cooking while my mom watches television. Shortly before noon, my father comes back, and the doorbell rings promptly. Michelle, I'm glad you could make it. Come in now, my mother replies with a smile. I've returned. After all this time, it's sentimental to be here at this place, Michelle remarks. Greetings, Michelle. It's been a long time, I say to her. You're still here, Tiffany. Michelle sneers. When I see Michelle for the first time in a long time, I see that she is wearing more cosmetics and fancy clothing from head to toe. There is no change in the triumphant look she gives me. I'm so tired, Michelle exclaims, flopping down on the sofa. As I look around for my nephew, I see my mother holding him. His wide-eyed, surprised expression is adorable. What are you looking at? Hurry up and get lunch ready, my mother says coldly, noticing me looking at my nephew. Mom, are you still making Tiffany do all the housework? Michelle asks, her tone mockingly curious. Of course, she just holes up in her room playing games all day, so she might as well be useful. That's true. She costs money just by being here, Michelle adds. My mother and Michelle continue their conversation cheerfully. Trying to engage Michelle in normal conversation, I ask about her married life. How's married life, Michelle? It must be tough with childcare and housework. Oh, I don't do any housework. I absolutely hate the idea of bustling about with chores every day like you do. What do you mean? We have a housekeeper, so I don't have to do anything. I remember that Michelle's husband is a doctor. When their marriage was decided, my mother and Michelle were overjoyed about her marrying into money. Wow, having a housekeeper must be nice. Is your husband busy with work? Yes, he's hardly at home, even on his days off, because of emergency calls. Considering my relationship with Michelle, this was a decent conversation. However, Michelle seemed unsatisfied and stopped me as I went to finish preparing the meal. You have such an easy life. Do you realize how much our parents struggle? What? You're still lying about working, aren't you? At your age, you should realize that because you're not independent, Mom has to work. Well, I've told you and Mom many times, but I do work from home and earn enough. You don't need to worry. If that's true, then move out and live on your own. You say you're earning, but it's probably just pocket money, right? You say that because you've never really struggled like our mother. Michelle didn't believe me. I was actually working and thought I was just living off my parents without the means to be independent. I stay in this house because it belonged to Grandpa and Grandma. It's filled with precious memories for me. I can't believe you're squatting here for that reason. If it were me, I wouldn't want to stay in such an old house. The house is old but has been renovated for accessibility for my grandfather. The kitchen and bathroom have been remodeled, and the appliances have been gradually replaced with newer ones, so I don't feel inconvenienced. Although our grandparents loved Michelle just as much, she probably felt bothered by their remarks and attitudes. Hence, she has no attachment to this house. I think the best thing for someone like me was to marry into wealth, but that's impossible for you. My mother snickered at Michelle's words. You can't get married, you can't show your parents our grandchild's face, and you don't even try to live on your own. You're really useless. I don't think marriage is everything. I live on the money I earn myself, and I'm fine with that. Stop saying that and quit lying already. Dad, Mom, and I are all tired of your lies. Just then my nephew started crying, and my mother glared at me. I fled her gaze and went back to the kitchen to silently continue preparing lunch. Frustrated, I concluded that explaining anything further to Michelle and our mother would be futile. Despite her criticisms, Michelle ate everything I had prepared. I had heard that Michelle had something important to discuss that day, but she left in the evening without mentioning anything. However, I noticed something concerning about Michelle's behavior. She was checking various parts of the house, like the upstairs rooms, the bathroom, and the kitchen we had been gradually remodeling since Michelle moved out. Her detailed inspections felt ominous, but she left without any issues that day, and I wondered when we would meet next. The next morning, while I was preparing breakfast, my mother suddenly spoke up. Make sure the house is tidy by next Sunday and prepare dinner well. Michelle, Dylan, and the kids are coming next week. They just came yesterday. What are they coming for, and why is her husband coming too? I bombarded my mother with questions in surprise. It's nothing to be so surprised about. They're family. Michelle said they have something important to discuss. There's something for you too, so keep your schedule free. I'm just happy I'll see the kids again. What could it possibly be about? I was filled with anxiety. Michelle hadn't shown her face since getting married, and now suddenly she decided to come again next week after visiting recently, this time with her husband. It all felt very strange. I pondered Michelle's intentions but couldn't come up with anything. However, unbeknownst to me, Michelle and our mother were having discussions. Can you believe the house is in Tiffany's name? What was Dad thinking? Don't worry, Mom. If we tell Tiffany everyone's burdened by her, she'll leave. The right to live in this house belongs to us. I was so caught up in work that before I knew it, it was already Sunday. The first time I met Michelle's husband, Dylan, was when he came to our house to formally introduce himself for their wedding. He had decided to become a doctor, influenced by his father, and although he was handsome, I remember feeling a chill in his demeanor. My mother, thrilled to hear he was the son of a doctor, welcomed him with great joy. However, since then, until today, Dylan has not visited our home, and neither my parents nor I have seen him since the wedding. In such a situation, I welcomed Michelle, my nephew, and Dylan after setting the dinner on the table. When I took another look at Dylan, he seemed to have lost a little weight compared to 2 years ago. As I returned to the kitchen, Michelle followed. Did you pick up these side dishes from some supermarket? I wonder if they will suit our taste, since we always eat high-quality food. This is a dish I made myself, taught by Grandma, so I can assure you of its quality. Unable to respond, Michelle looked displeased for a moment, but then quickly put on a caring wife's face and began serving the dishes. During dinner, Michelle mostly bragged about how her child was superior to others. Throughout dinner, Dylan barely spoke, seeming distant even as he listened to Michelle's stories. Seeing our adorable child, don't you wish you had another grandchild? Michelle shot a malicious glance at me, seemingly ready to use me as a target again. Indeed, we could have had another grandchild by now, but that's impossible since Tiffany's not even married. Before even thinking of children, finding a marriage partner is essential, isn't it? And with you always in your room playing games, how could you possibly meet anyone? And to top it off, you're unemployed and still living at home. After enduring such harsh insults, I had finished my meal and was about to leave the table when my mother spoke to me in a voice filled with anger. Planning to leave the table by yourself? We're not done here. There's an important discussion coming up, so sit down and listen. Let's get to the point. Tiffany, can you please leave this house? My sister's abrupt request left me speechless. Just try living on your own for once. Both Dad and Mom are at their limit living with you. If things continue this way, you won't change. It almost sounded like she was saying it was for my own good, that I should move out and live on my own, as if she was reluctantly advising me. You really should realize how much of a disappointment you are. Learning to earn enough to live on your own and understanding the harshness of society would do you some good. Wait, Mom, how many times do I have to say I'm working and earning my own money? When will you understand? My hands trembled with anger as I spoke, frustrated that they never listened. Just because you make a little money from your hobbies doesn't mean you're earning a living. No, I earn enough every month to pay for my own expenses. Plus, I paid for all the renovations in this house. I funded the renovations after our grandfather's death with the money I had saved from my job. My parents were aware of this because they hadn't made any of the payments. You think you're something, don't you? That money was Grandpa's, wasn't it? What, did you think I didn't know you received money from Grandpa before he passed away? Grandfather had indeed given me a bank book shortly before he died, the result of my grandparents saving up, worried about my future due to the neglect from my parents. They must have thought it would come in handy someday. What do you mean? How do you know about that? I asked. I saw it in your drawer. I found it right away, but where did you hide the cash card? I couldn't withdraw the money. How could you do something like that? That's despicable." I was stunned and deeply shocked. Those two were always nicer to me, but to think they left money behind for me, sidelining the others, how dare they? Don't trample on Grandpa and Grandma's feelings. They left that money as they were thinking of my well-being, I said, feeling belittled by their disregard for my grandparents' intentions. My anger intensified. And then I finally understood why my parents had never mentioned the renovation payments. They must have known about the bank book and had intended for me to handle the costs from the start. They assumed that I had covered the renovation costs with the money from the bank account I received. Let's forget about the money for now. Thanks to it, the old house has decent amenities, and the appliances are fairly new. It's infuriating that only you received it, but well, I'll forgive you. Grandpa and Grandma probably foresaw that you'd struggle to be independent and jobless. The inside of the house was clean, and the appliances were quite nice. Was Michelle's sudden inspection of the house meant to check on these improvements? As your sister, I'm really worried about you. You understand that, right? She said, looking at me. I just glared at her silently. Ignoring my look, she smirked and began to reveal her true intentions. Actuality's about to build a new hospital, she said proudly, glancing at Dylan, whose expression remained stern. What? Actually, we're thinking of moving in here as well. Why would that be? We've decided to build a new hospital around this area. There's spare land and not many hospitals around, right? So we plan to use this house as a base to commute to the hospital. That's why we need you to move out. But you can't just spring this on me all of a sudden. I know this house is in your name, but you should leave for Mom and Dad's sake. Just give the house to me. Why do you get to decide that all on your own? Of course, both Dad and Mom agree with me. They truly want you out as well. I remembered that Grandpa had transferred the house into my name before he passed away. At the time, I didn't understand his true intentions, but now it seemed clear. The real head of this house is Dad. Titles don't matter, so just leave quietly. No, this house is filled with memories of Grandma and Grandpa. Stop being so childish. You're just a parasite living here, bothering everyone. It's time for you to leave, Michelle shouted, as if delivering a final blow. Tiffany, don't you think you're a bad influence on your nephew? I turned my eyes towards my mother as she said this. You think your nephew is cute, right? Do you really want him to see you living like a parasite, dependent on your parents for his education? You should leave. During this, my father kept his gaze down, fiddling with his phone. Dylan remained silent, but his attentive listening suggested he agreed. At that moment, I thought to myself, let them think what they will. Nothing I say would matter to them. I wanted to escape from this toxic environment as soon as possible. Fine, do whatever you like, I said and stormed up to my room. I was furious about everything but decided to think calmly about what to do next. That night, I made a decision. The next morning, I went downstairs to find Michelle's family gone. My parents seemed to be asleep, and the leftover mess from the previous night remained untouched. I took my laptop and headed to a nearby cafe. Soon, my phone was bombarded with calls and emails from my mother demanding to know where I was and to come back and make their breakfast. But I ignored them all and proceeded with my plan. Using my laptop, I first searched for moving companies and contacted one as soon as their office opened. Thankfully, since it was off-peak season, they could come on the same day. I timed my return to the house when I knew my parents would be at work. The house was a mess after just a few hours without me, and I sighed deeply in frustration. Shortly after, the movers arrived with a large truck. Which items are we taking? Everything in the house. The movers efficiently packed up everything I had purchased, from large appliances, like the washing machine, vacuum cleaner, fridge, and microwave, to smaller items like dishes. It was lively when I had all the latest electronic appliances, but after everything was moved out, the house felt empty and somewhat sad. Legally, this was still my house, but I no longer wanted to be there. However, I vowed not to waste my grandparents' intentions. As I left the house filled with my grandparents' memories, I felt oddly liberated. That evening my phone rang. It was my mother. "What the hell is going on? All the appliances are gone. Did you take them?" "Of course I did. You wanted me out, so I'm leaving, but naturally I'm taking what I bought." "I'm glad you're leaving, but taking the appliances is not right." "Why not? They're mine. I bought them." "You bought them with Grandpa's money." "No. How many times do I have to tell you? The money from Grandpa is very important to me. I wouldn't touch it. I bought everything with my own money. I sent her a photo of my bank book showing today's date to prove it. I had just withdrawn $100, so the balance should make it clear." "You're horrible to do this to your own parents." "Fine. We don't need your appliances. We'll ask Michelle and her family to help." "I don't care, but you guys need to leave quickly. That house is in my name." "What? Don't be ridiculous." That was the last I heard from my mother. Inwardly, I hoped Dylan could successfully buy the house, not just the appliances. A few days later, Michelle contacted me sooner than expected. "Tiffany, I hope you've calmed down by now. Can we talk just one more time, please?" Her tone was different, as if she were treading carefully. "What do you want?" "I'm busy with work." "Make it quick." "I've been thinking since then. It was our mistake to try to kick you out. We're family. Shouldn't we live together?" "After calling me a parasite, now you suddenly talk about family?" "Absolutely not. You guys have moved in already, haven't you?" "We moved in yesterday, but there have been some complications." "Oh, about Dylan? He got fired from the hospital, right?" "I know, though it's amazing you kept quiet about it." "How do you know that?" "I'm not as clueless as you think. A friend of mine works in admin at the hospital Dylan was at. She told me he was fired for having an affair. It turns out that Dylan had an affair with a nurse and got her pregnant. He tried to convince the woman not to have the child to keep the affair hidden, but the enraged woman exposed the truth throughout the hospital. Fearing the hospital's reputation would suffer, Dylan's father decided to fire him. Dylan couldn't tell Michelle the truth and fabricated a story about building a new hospital to secure a place to live. Actually, I just found out about it recently and was shocked. Now he has no money and is being sued for compensation by the woman's husband. Plus, Dad has left home." "What happened to Dad?" "Michelle claims that her father had an affair as well and left divorce papers and a note before leaving right before Michelle and her family were supposed to move in. My mother became sick after reading the message, which apparently contained grievances he had written about her." "Tiffany, you can't just abandon us in such a miserable state. Will you assist us? The money that Grandpa gave you is still with you, right? Now what do you say? Mom showed me the bank book snapshot. I think you're at work right now. Ironically, they only turn to me when it's convenient for them, after all this time when they didn't think I could sustain myself with my wages. Don't depend on me only when it suits you. I'm not returning. Grandma and Grandpa's memories filled the house, so I've put up with everything, but I've come to terms with the fact that they will always be in my heart. Wait, please. Asking for my assistance right now only bothers me since I don't have any pleasant memories of Dad, Mom, or you. Also, be sure to relocate out as quickly as possible. I am the owner of the house. Yes, all along I had been enduring. My heart felt lighter after saying all of this aloud, and I was certain that I could finally find happiness. Please, Tiffany, are you going to abandon your family like this? I didn't answer my mother's or Michelle's calls or texts after that. They kept getting in touch with me for the first 3 months, but now they appear to have given up, and I enjoy calm days. I've heard that the pair borrowed money to build a hospital, but it doesn't seem to be attracting any patients, perhaps because Dylan's affair partner has been spreading unfavorable stories. The shock of my father's departure caused my mother to become depressed, and she is presently in the hospital. I also made the decision to sell that house when I made the decision to leave, and I followed through on that decision. Michelle and her family were forced to relocate to a neighboring apartment after seeing the notice of sale. There is little they can do because they are indebted and have no patience. I'm no longer concerned about it. But because my nephew is innocent in all of this, I do hope he finds happiness. In my case, thanks to my grandparents, I'm doing well at work and growing my company. One day I want to discover a place where I really fit in. I'm resolved to continue enjoying life to the fullest.